This is Failing Justice.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Failing Justice podcast. I am your host, as always, Justin Carlson. Want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. It's been a week. It's been a good week. We had a good show last week. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties here. We got somebody in here going to fix it for us. Give us just a second. Yeah, it's not showing up on there. I'm not sure why. Out. Hang on just a second. We're going to get this situated here just a second so we can get some video going. Get somebody in here working on it. There we are. We got video now. Hey, everybody. Sorry about that. There we go. Anyways, as I was saying, welcome to the Failing Justice podcast. I am your host, and this is my unofficial co-host.
Unofficial.
We're working on making that official.
Might talk me into it at some point.
I just don't know about this guy sometimes, so.
Yeah, that's true.
But we are working on it. We're just going to call him unofficial for now. But this is like, what, your fourth, fifth?
Maybe fifth, yeah.
Yeah, man. But it's been good. Hell of a podcast last week, right?
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, man. It was really cool to have Tyrone Day in here. Just a really good conversation, incredible story. And I would say, like, visiting with him after the fact was, we stayed in here for almost another hour, just chit-chatting, and, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely, I would agree, and I probably could have stayed here a couple more hours and continued the conversation, and look forward to when we get to, get them back on and continue building that relationship. I think that's what it's all about, man, is just building these relationships, having these conversations, learning together. So, but his testimony was just, man, it was moving, and I learned a lot for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know you listened to the podcast when Richard Miles was here, and but you weren't here for it, I think I noticed, and not to put you on the spot, but I definitely think being here in person for something like that, rather than reading about it or hearing it, even just driving down the road or whatever, listen to it on the podcast, I think you kind of felt that, like, being here in person, like talking to him, seeing his, meeting his wife, and kind of feeling that emotion and energy in the room. I think it's different. And tell me if I'm wrong, but
no doubt. It's it's completely different, and I don't think that it's just really hard to compare it to anything until you experience it. So. Yeah, I think being in the same room and, listening to his story, and then, he's a super humble guy, and just taking it in. And like I said, just being there together, having vulnerable conversations, building that relationship, and, I couldn't compare it to just, listening to the podcast or watching it. It definitely was, it was changing. It was moving. And I would say, emotionally overwhelming. Even after we left, I think you and I stayed on the phone for at least a good hour afterwards, because we were.
It was a late night.
It was a very
late night.
There was a lot. It was overwhelming. Just so many thoughts going through our mind. I think, one of my takeaways was I know we talk a lot about what we can do differently in the law enforcement profession, but after hearing his story, it was a little overwhelming to realize that I think we've got a lot of work to do
all the way around the wheel.
Yeah, the entire system. So,
yeah, and you know, one cool thing about it too is after the fact, like in our conversation, like his support for Failing Justice and our mission, like what we're trying to do. And he even said it just like Richard Miles said it. We talked about it. Like this was his first time sitting down with law enforcement professionals since all this went down, being on parole, getting out, of course he just got exonerated in May, but you know, Richard Miles, he'd been exonerated for a while now, almost a decade or over a decade, and he still hadn't talked to law enforcement professionals. So I think guys like that, man, who, you know, the battles that we face in law enforcement, and we face them, are nothing in comparison to what guys like that have faced. And so hearing his support, sitting there talking to somebody, he texted me, so we did that podcast on Wednesday. So he texted me on, it was maybe Thursday, it was the next day, and it was a real nice message. And he said, "Hey, you know, I just want to let you know, I appreciate you having me on the platform. I just really support what you do, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help further what your mission is." And, you know, I'll say it 1,000 times over, like, people can hear us talking, people can scroll Facebook, people can scroll YouTube and just kind of see these videos, but man, just having somebody like that say, "Hey, like, we support you, like I support you, support this organization, and what can I do to help further it?" It just means a lot, and you have to understand why somebody like that would want to support this, because we are trying to change and trying to prevent things from happening, the very things that happened to him. So I thought that was cool, getting that text and talking to him about that, and having that support, being able to lean on him anytime. That's what he said.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think that's a relationship that we'll continue to foster. So,
yeah, and in some good things that happened this week is we've had some Zoom meetings this week in reference to our next steps with Failing Justice. We're on the path to putting this as an official 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Right.
Super pumped about that, right?
Yeah, it's exciting.
I'm just going to give a shout out. I didn't ask if I could do this, but shout out to Brandy Flanagan for taking the time and being willing to do this and help us out. You know, I'm excited about the future. All the talks we've had this week about the things we can do with Failing Justice. So many different things under the umbrella that I want to do, and I'm kind of pumped about it, man. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm in like Flynn.
Yeah. You're committed, huh?
Yeah.
That's why you call me the unofficial co-host.
Well, I'm just waiting on your commitment, honestly.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. It was, good conversation there today, and I think that making some strides to take Failing Justice into a whole different level. The 501 nonprofit will be a big step for the organization, and I think will help make our voice louder, right? And I think it's important that people know that we're trying to look at all aspects of the justice system, and that's why it's good to build those partner relationships and have other people come in and talk about different different areas because we're not experts in it all. And in the
Right.
justice system, there's so much. So I think that nonprofit will give us the opportunity to do that. And the ultimate goal is to be able to make an impact and a positive impact, right? So I think that those are good steps.
Yeah, and I've heard multiple people tell me, and I don't boast about this in a hey, look at me type situation, but I just really think it's crazy that this isn't happening as far as my knowledge anywhere. And I mean, at least publicly, not saying it's not happening at police agencies or district attorney's office or whatever. I'm not saying anybody like these conversations aren't happening, but I do take some pride in that. Like, hey, we've never heard this. We don't know of anybody else that's doing this, and always revert back to like who's going to do it, right? Like if it's not being done, to me, I take that as that's a big responsibility. Like this is serious, and I want to impact. And it's like we were talking, like, are we going to be able to change the world? Like, probably not. Golly, there's some sirens out there. Yeah, Dallas PD or fire department or something. But yeah, like we're not going to be able to save the world, but we can impact the world that is around us. And even making that nonprofit status and being able to kind of branch out further, because we will have more resources, impact as far as we can reach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely, I agree. Yeah. And, I definitely don't see it as, trying to save the world or necessarily the system or fix it all, or even the profession. We obviously, since I've been on, we focus a lot about law enforcement specific, like the law enforcement profession. We hone in and we talk a lot about that because that's what we know. Right. I don't think that just the two of us are going to change the entire profession. What I would hope is that we influence change. Right. And by getting others on board and listening and hearing stories, I think that will influence some change. And then, trickle up from there and in the system and start having conversations with the prosecutors, DA's office, judges. I mean, and go from there. It's like I said, man, like, after last week's podcast, it was really, it was overwhelming to hear some of those things. And, I looked at it from a couple of different perspectives because I do believe that obviously that was 1989, right?
Yeah.
So that was a while ago. I wasn't even born then. So I was,
oh man, put that out there.
Yeah. Were you born then?
Youngster. Yeah, I was born.
Yeah, you are old. Yeah.
Youngster.
So I can't even sit here and, try to talk like I know what was going on back then in law enforcement, right? Like I could have some assumptions or hear stories, relay stories that I've heard, but, I would like to think that we've improved in areas.
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah.
For sure.
especially procedurally. But, just other parts of that story was, it's the little things, I think, where we haven't, improved across the entire system to begin with. And I think at some point there needs to be a major call to action to improve the entire thing. And like I said, we were on the phone for an hour, and it is overwhelming because I'm like, where do you begin?
Yeah, it was some, it's like we were on the phone, but we were silent in some moments. We were like, where do you say? Where do you begin?
Yeah. Like,
but I agree. I mean, yes, I think, and I said the same thing. Procedurally, I think we have most certainly improved in so many different ways. I mean, witness identifications, DNA, technology's evolved, and there's just so many things we have at our disposal that I know we have improved on. And you say, funny, you mentioned, I guess I was really young, obviously, year 2 years old. So I don't know what was going on in law enforcement either. But I think the difference between you and I is I had family, like I grew up around family in law enforcement. And I'm talking that old school 70s, 80s, 90s law enforcement. And I can't remember what it's called. There's a book out it's about Smith County. I think it's called Smith County Justice, which is the county that I'm from. And I'm pretty sure my grandpa's in that book. And so, like, the reason I say that is because I'd grow up and seeing my family in law enforcement is what influenced me to get in law enforcement to begin with. I say this all the time. I have no just profound, crazy story about why I entered other than my family was in it, and I just really thought it was cool. So, but I grew up hearing the stories like of kind of how things were back then. And even to hear my family talk now, and I don't want to put them on the spot because they have some really old school ways of thinking, especially when it comes to law enforcement. But them are them days, man, where, I mean, they had the slappers and the PR-24 batons and it was, they
nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with PR. I know you
PR-24.
Got an old school.
It's an effective tool.
It's an effective tool.
If you know how to use it right.
Yeah. And so I've heard the stories, man. And to hear those stories and then compare them to like Tyrone's story and kind of his encounter and back then, man, it's just, but you can't, that's what they taught you. It all goes back to culture. That's what they taught you. And I think we've actually even probably improved somewhat in the culture. But here's my deal. Did we improve because like we wanted to, or we saw an error in our ways, or did we improve because of the Rodney King's incidents like that, where, the police brutally beat Rodney King? And what was our reason behind our improvements? And that's why I still think now, there's still some of that residual old school thought, some of that old school thinking, that old school policing, that old school leadership, quote unquote leadership. Like, again, I call it just kicking the can down the road. Like, I think that we have improved some, but we still have obviously just so much work to do. And I don't think the majority of people in law enforcement disagree with that. I think it kind of goes back to a lot of people can't speak out, or they're afraid to. What we're doing is Richard Miles calls me the unicorn, because we do it at the risk of anything, because it's what we believe in.
Yeah.
And Richard even said himself, he said, when you start having people sit at your table and put those earphones on and get behind that microphone that are active law enforcement, specifically speaking law enforcement,
Yeah.
But you can even broaden that, active prosecutors, active public defenders, defense attorneys. When you have people like that are sitting at this table and having a conversation, they're not afraid of what their administrators might think. And I think he's right. I think that's when we will start to see the pendulum kind of swing the other way.
Yeah. Man, it's a lot to dissect,
Yeah.
Well, because I would describe myself as an introvert, right?
You're strange, man. You can be both. Like, in my opinion, sometimes I have a hard time describing you.
Yeah.
But I would say you definitely have the introvert traits.
Yeah. So I would say that, a majority of the time I sit back and I listen and observe, so, I've heard a lot of conversations, from people who've been on the job 20 plus years. And, I've heard officers talk about the different phases that the profession has gone through.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were saying, like the old school ways and the old school mentality. And then like you'll get a different generation in, or like a new phase. And then, we'll go to very procedural heavy, protocol heavy, like doing the same thing all the time because that's what we're told to do. And then you go back to kind of more of the, I guess you could say, old school policing. I think it's just like a repetitive cycle from what I put together, right? Because I'll be honest, I think there's benefits to some of the things that we used to do that we currently don't do anymore.
Mm.
And I think that is, it hinders us, right? Like it kind of, I think it impacts the quality of service we provide, the quality of policing. And then I would say that, we get really protocol or procedural heavy. And the issue with that is like, there's no policy or procedure that's going to be a one size fits all ever.
Well, yeah. And you said that a couple weeks ago. I don't remember which episode or what we were talking about, but I mean, you're right. One size cannot fit all. Period. One size can fit a lot of situations, but then one size cannot fit a lot of situations. So I mean, again, I think it goes back to the whole. It may be in the book, right? The book's this big. There's a lot of stuff in there, man. But like, just because it's in there,
just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And just talking from the heart here tonight, man, like trying to get. I never heard that in the academy. Never.
I definitely don't think I did.
And trying to to teach people that. Where we have really got to step up, I think, seriously, we have to step up, is because the old collegers are, I mean, they're retiring, right? They are leaving. People are leaving because they're fed up with the profession, and those are guys, and I'll say old collegers, I'm talking about the 20, 30-year guys. Yeah, they are retiring. But then you have guys, in between that 10 and 20-year mark that are leaving because they're tired of it. And so the new generation is moving in. And it has to start, like we talked about before, it has to start early on. And it's all about, number one, who you have standing up there with that laser pointer and who has that certificate that's teaching these academies.
Yeah.
Because I think what we also discussed was the fact that these guys are retiring and then they're just hopping over to the local academy and drawing a check, going in there, teaching people the same thing. So, I mean, and I'll be quite honest with you, just to be frank, I don't have the answer for how you fix that. Can you honestly say, hey, yeah, you've been on the job 30 years, you're probably an idiot and you don't need to teach at this academy. Like, how do you combat that problem? I don't have an answer for that, but I know it's a problem.
Yeah, and I don't want to lump.
Of course, never anything we talk about, you cannot just throw a blanket over everybody and say, hey, like, you're all grouped in this category, because that's not the case. And I think that's with anything. But
yeah. So how I would describe it is I think that we've seen these evolutions in the cycle one or two, maybe three times, right? Where we've gone from spirit to letter, policy-driven procedures over and over and over again. And then we have, like us, we're younger in our profession. I mean, you're quite a bit older than me. Probably, what, like 50?
What?
You going on 50?
50? No, not quite.
Nah, but so, I mean, how many years do you have on?
Oh, man, I started in 2007.
Yeah.
Of course, those 3 years I worked in the jail.
Yeah.
A hell of an experience. And then from 2007 to 10, I worked in the jail. And then from 10 to 21, I was certified cop, working the street in cases or whatever. So, I'm going on my 15th year, I guess.
Yeah.
Approaching it.
Yeah.
So, and
I'm 6, almost 7. So fairly young in our careers, I would say.
Yeah.
You probably halfway point. I'm assuming that's what you're thinking, right? If you're thinking about retirement, right?
I mean,
you don't want to
halfway point. Yeah.
You don't want to be pushing a radio car when you're 60.
No, I don't.
But so I think it's easy for us to sit here and go, well, a lot of the problem is we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. And it's, I catch myself sometimes, and it's one specific issue, because our perspective is kind of limited, because of the time that we've had on the job. But I do think that, like, there's probably a lot of things that we could take from the generations that are leaving law enforcement now that would be useful, like good tools to have in our toolbox that we're never going to know about because we don't talk about it. Because we've told these guys, that's probably, one of the only times you'll hear me going to bat for the old way of doing things,
yeah.
right? But we've told these guys, no, that's wrong. That doesn't work. We're doing it this way. And so cops like you and I who've been on the job 7 years, we've never maybe heard some of those things, right? And then they've changed the direction, and there could be all these useful resources that we'll never even hear about. Where I'm going with that is there's a Rick Lasky. He's a pretty well-known fire chief. He writes a book. It's called Pride and Ownership, a Firefighter's Love for the Job. Don't quote me word for word, but I'm pretty sure that's the last part of the title. But in that book, he really talks about how important it is for when the rookie comes on. Because in the fire service, that's what, they're very traditional. When the rookie comes on, it's important for the oldest guy on shift to take that rookie under his wing and teach him the good, the bad, the ugly. Well, I think in law enforcement, that's something that we don't do. Is we might just talk about the good, but we don't talk about the bad and the ugly. And how are we supposed to learn from our mistakes if we don't talk about it? So that's where I hope that we can kind of bridge that gap with failing justice and make a safer place to have those conversations, because I'm sure there's a lot of good things that the older generations have done that we don't even know. Like there's probably a lot of good effective policing techniques that we could use, but we'll never hear about it because we've already shifted, I think right now, back into a very policy and procedure driven way of policing. And, we're never going to even have the opportunity to learn. I guess where I'm going is like, there's always a time to learn from our successes and failures. And I don't think we do that well enough. We definitely don't talk about the failures openly amongst our peers.
Yeah. Well, I think social media and the news media do a really good job of highlighting the failures. I mean, we saw it a couple weeks ago. We were talking about Leonard Cure and how that clickbait tagline, headline was "Man exonerated after 16 years, shot and killed by police." And so you have people that hate the police that see that right away and then go, I'm going to click on that. Let me read this. And then like, hell yeah, even though I think we concluded the cop not the actual use of force, but what led up to that was probably could have been different. Maybe change the outcome, maybe not. But I think the news media just does such a good job at highlighting our failures immediately because it's a juicy story. And that's fine and dandy, whatever, however you want to look at that. But I don't think that happens enough within, at our own tables, highlighting our failures and also, again, our success is just the same. Like, hey, this was really good, and this is really bad. And I think everything immediately, if something happens, if an incident happens out on the street, chiefs immediately just go to the policy manual and say, hey, what's the policy say? If we just took a little time to watch some videos, bring those officers in, sit them down at a conference table and just say, let's talk about it. Like, what were you really thinking? But everybody goes into such procedure mode. Like, what's the internal affairs book say? We have to bring you in, take your gun and badge. We need a statement addressing this, this, and this, and we need it, 48 hours from now. And so then you got this cop calling his attorney and kind of running the incident down to his attorney, and his attorney's in, of a different mindset. And I think there's a time and place for that, obviously. Like, there's times where that has to be done, depending on the severity of the situation. But I'm saying in general,
I think what you're getting is how we treat each other.
How we treat each other, and sitting down and talking about our successes and failures, and because everybody's so scared of the media, everybody's so scared of social media. We don't want to be that agency on TV. And of course we don't. Obviously, nobody wants freaking wants that. But because what comes out is gospel, what's said is said, and all these people watching Fox 4 Dallas see something, and that's just boom, just immediately gospel. But going back, like you said, how we're treating each other. That's we could segue into that topic easily right now.
Well, I do think, to kind of follow up on that, I think there is a major issue. There's a major roadblock from us being getting any kind of successful outcome with change. I'll just be pretty candid. It's politics. Love it or hate it, it's politics. I think our criminal justice system has been eroded with political decisions.
Nobody's authentic. Where's the authenticity?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
all a show. It's literally.
It starts there. The political divide, I do believe. And I'll be honest, I don't foresee that going away anytime soon.
Oh, no.
So what we have to figure out how to do is navigate to influence change with that major roadblock, right? And figure out how to get around it, because I don't think that we're going to be able to necessarily change that just yet, because that is such a bigger battle. And I think at this point, to change that divide, you're talking about having to influence hearts, and see a change in heart in some parts of the country. So, yeah, that's a big struggle. I go contemplate a lot of things I say when it comes to this topic, because sometimes I'm like, well, we need less political influence on the criminal justice system. And then I contradict that with, we need less, like in some forms of government, we need less, we need more voices impacting the criminal justice system, especially when it comes to law enforcement. Like, maybe, sheriffs are elected. They're supposed to represent the majority of the people that voted them in. Maybe, does municipalities need to be that way? Like, maybe is that the problem sometimes? Is that I think sometimes police departments don't represent the people they serve. Yeah. And I don't mean that in like, with, race, religious, whatever, or even political. I just mean like they're not necessarily there for the service of the people that they're serving. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've always thought that, we were not too long ago, we were talking about, one of the battles with what we do, I think, is coming up with solutions, like real solutions for the change. I don't know why this iPad's tripping over here. It's blinking and I don't know. But anyway, I think one of the battles we face is we think about it a lot. I mean, we talk about it a lot, you and I specifically. But something that you said, I've thought for such a long time is like I think when it comes to police chiefs specifically in a city government, I think they should also be elected, because you also hear I think sometimes these chiefs and these sheriffs, these chief administrators, they're either serving themselves or they're serving their donors, like specifically sheriffs. They have people who,
I would say that,
who donate to their campaigns. And so
I think it could be a pick your poison type situation, because you do see some sheriffs that get elected that really cater to the politics.
Yeah.
I think that's
because it's a political campaign. They're running a campaign to get elected.
Yes. And that's where I'm saying, like, I think to a degree, the entire system, not just law enforcement, the entire judicial process has been poisoned by political influence. You can't have justice that way.
Oh. It's a popularity contest. As this guy is our savior. We think he's going to save us, do for us what we need him to do. And then you have the other people who didn't vote for him, think the opposite. And of course, he's not going to try to, and they're not going to try to bridge the gap between this group and this group, right? You look at our national stage, like, it's hard to get a bipartisan approach to anything. And politics, you're right, man. It's just such a, it's like I'm at the Grand Canyon and I'm staring at this major problem. I'm like, how am I going to fill this hole? How do I fix this?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't think it's going to happen in the next decade, in the next 2 decades. I think it's going to take the next 2 or 3 generations. Let me rephrase that. I think it would take the next 2 or 3 generations to see the change that I would feel comfortable with my children growing up in. Right? Because that's really what, when I try to think about what kind of change I'd want to see, or especially on a larger scale, I think about that. When I'm gone and I'm not here to protect my kids, what would I feel comfortable with them having to live with? And I think it's going to take some time, because I think it's such a larger issue, and the political issue is one, and then I think it's the heart and the soul and the mind issue on the other.
You said it, man. Honestly, like, it's a heart thing.
Yeah.
It's truly a matter of the heart. And I think our world, man, where has the heart gone? Like I talked about on September 11th, September 11th, 2001, and then highlighted, September 12th as, like, talk about heart. Where has the heart gone? And specifically speaking in our country, like, I think
pride to be an American.
Yeah.
What it means to be an American. What freedom means.
This generation coming up, like, they don't know what the Constitution is. they don't know the history of our country and how our country was founded and how it came to be and the principles that it was founded on. And those things don't matter. What matters are to them, like, are tangible things that they can see and touch and scroll. And we have so many influencers on the internet now, like, who are just spitting BS propaganda, like, left and right for clicks and views and shares. And, there's no heart in that, dude. There's no heart in that at all, because they have an agenda, and then the people watching it, they're soaking that in, and everything literally in front of our face on all of these screens is just gospel.
Yeah.
No matter who's saying it, we don't know their background, we don't know their experience. They're totally full of crap, and whatever they're saying is what people are believing. And then they're taking that and they're sharing it, and everybody's seeing it. I mean, it can go from Dallas, Texas to freaking New Zealand in a minute. And there's just no heart anymore, dude. I don't want to sound like
this is a depressing show.
I know it is. It is a depressing show, but it's like, I'm gonna call you out on I'm just gonna tell the truth, because we talk from the heart. We speak candidly. Before this show, especially to the people listening, it's been a crazy week, and I was struggling literally all the way up until I pushed the button to go live. I'm not here to put some face on to make me look like, just this warrior of justice or just this perfect person. I'm human and I struggle. And one thing you told me, oddly enough, we were in the bathroom, we were tucking our shirts. Preston told me, I said, man, I don't feel prepared for this show. And he said, man, he's like, I don't think people watch us or listen to us because of our content and what we've prepared and how good we look. I think they listen to us simply because, we speak from the heart, and we try to be as authentic. Going back to authenticity, we try to be as authentic as we can. And ever since you said that, an hour ago, whenever it was, like, I've been thinking about that, because I know you're right. The show does sound kind of depressing tonight, but man, like, the truth of the matter is the heart in our country and in the world abroad. I mean, look what's going on, man, in the Middle East, and the heart is just not there. Nobody. I don't say nobody. I can't say that, because I can't. That would be untrue. A lot of people just don't do things. Going back to Rob Vine, they don't do things for the right reasons, at the right time. They don't do that. And heart is just lost. You said it. I'm going to harp on that, because that is the problem. That's the problem with the entire world. That is certainly the problem with what we talk about, our system, our law enforcement, our criminal justice system on the prosecution side, that's what's wrong.
Yeah, and I would relate that back to...
We need Jesus. If we're going to be honest, we need some Jesus in this world. And
well, I tell you what, since you brought it up, I had a chief chief I previously worked with, really big influence in my life, right? And career. I can remember it like it was yesterday. So we'd all go eat lunch together, like a really close group. We'd eat lunch together dang near every day. And we were sitting at the restaurant, and I was, probably hadn't worked with them, but maybe 6 months to a year at the time. And we usually all got into some pretty deep conversations over lunch, right? And it could be about anything. And we were talking about the job specifically that day. And he looked at me and he goes, "You know what you need to be successful in this career? to make it 30 years, to make it to retirement. I'm like, shoot, I don't know. He's like, you got to have faith. He's like, I don't care what it is. I don't care what it's in, but you got to have faith in something other than yourself. You just got to have some faith. You got to have a good support team around you, or you won't make it very far. You got to have some support to lean on. And you got to have a hobby. Those are 3 things, and I remember it. You got to have faith. Don't matter what it's in, but just faith in something greater than yourself. You got to have a good support system in place, and you got to have a hobby. Yeah, I'm still working on a couple of them, but I feel like faith is one that I've accomplished recently within the last couple of years, and I will say that has made a difference in my life and given me a more peaceful perspective on things. So, I would agree with your statement. We need some Jesus. For me, I'm a Christian. I believe in that, but I would say in general, like, just have faith in something. Yeah. Something other than what you see in front of you or what you can touch or what somebody else is telling you about.
And you're right. I'm not going to. Growing up in my old school Christian beliefs, and I've evolved over the years as far as I'm still a Christian, but my thoughts and beliefs aren't as radical as they were when I grew up, and but speaking specifically Christianity. It says in the Bible, and I heard my pastor say this on Sunday. Heard it 1,000 times, but Sunday's sermon was really good, and he you forget to do this because we are selfish. But he says, Christ says, take up thy cross daily and follow me. And his reference was, what you're saying every day when you get out of bed and the first thing you pick up is your phone. How many text messages do I got? How many Facebook notifications do I have? What's blowing up at work? Like what emails, whatever. When you do that, you get out of bed and you look at this phone and that's the first thing that you see. He was saying that all you're saying is, God, I got this today. I'm good. I'm going to be able to handle whatever comes at me today by myself. You're essentially saying that. You're not saying that out loud, but in your action, that's what you're saying. And you're going on about your day, and you're faced with whatever the crap you're going to be faced with that day. And you can't. And that doesn't mean I don't knock anybody for any religion whatsoever, but I'm specifically speaking Christianity here right now because that's what I am. Like, that really hit me when he said that because I'm like, you know what? How many times that I get up, I'm not going to sit here and say I hit my knees and start praying immediately. That's not what I do, because I like to get every minute of sleep that I am not a morning person. I can't stand mornings. We talked about that today. It's morning people and being successful, but I'm just not a morning person, man. And my mind is pretty clouded in the mornings, no matter how much sleep I've gotten or how less sleep I've gotten. My mind is usually the same. And that's not what I'm thinking about. But when he said that Sunday, I'm just like, what if I just started doing that, like just saying, hey, thank you, God, for waking me up today. Thank you for waking my kids up. Give me wisdom to face whatever situation I face today. And just like you said, believing in something bigger than yourself, because we are all human, and just the things that we all face every day, again, you put 10 people in this room and you give them a scenario, you're going to have 10 different opinions. Like, we're not going to get it right.
No.
And heck, even if we pray, that don't mean we're going to get it right.
No.
But it still mean, like, to me, it's like, okay, I am looking at something bigger than myself for wisdom and guidance to handle any situation that I face during this day. And I know so many cops, man, you do too, that they don't have anything that they believe in. It's just a robotic day in and day out. And I think that goes back to, they teach you in any leadership course, why? What is your why? Think back to why you got in this profession. I think that's what it goes back to, like having something bigger than yourself that you believe in and that you're leaning on. I don't care if it's freaking Buddha, whatever God you believe in, like, or fish, I don't care, but something that for you to get away from yourself. And I think that's part of our problem in this criminal legal process that we have, is that we are just so about self.
Yeah.
And that's how you get Tyrone Days, Christine Bunches, Richard Miles. That's how you get those outcomes. It's because we're about self.
Yeah.
And we forget
that we're servants.
That we are servants to these people in our communities, because they need us. We're not always going to be at our best, but they are believing in us. They need us. Tyrone Day needed a cop that night to come to him and talk to him and sit him down and say, hey, tell me about your day. Like, what happened here? Ain't nobody talked to the guy. Just my opinion, my take.
Yeah,
we are so caught up in self that we are failing miserably.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't believe it's all intentional either. I think it's routine.
No, and you're right, dude. Not all the time is it intentional.
I think it's become routine. Lost the meaning of service. And that's okay. It's all right to be misguided sometimes. But I think to really see some difference, that we've got to turn around and reevaluate things and get down to the root cause and remind ourselves why we're here, why we want to be here, why we want to do the job. And that's I speak for the entire process, entire system. We've got to find, like you said, our why and our reason and our purpose. Yeah, I thought it's something you just said, the criminal, what do you call it?
Criminal legal process is what Richard Miles calls it.
So I think that's a very accurate way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, justice, you look at the screen and it's failing justice.
Yeah.
We have failed justice for generation upon generation. And it's and that's why I think when he refers to it that way, he takes justice out, because
rightfully so.
Yeah.
Because of what happened, what he experienced, and that should be enough for us to go, whoa. Let's reevaluate. And I respect that, you know, it could, because it's very procedural. But I do think that it's important to hold on to the value of that word justice, even when we are lost and misguided and might not know what it means or can't describe it. Because I think that's the key thing to remember too about justice, is I don't know if you're going to be able to hold a definition to it or describe it, because I think it
means something different to everybody.
To everybody, your justice is going to be different than mine.
I know, we get in arguments all the time,
and I think what we have to start doing is learning how to listen for what the people's justice is at that time, and get away from being like you say, robotic, and just very persistent on doing it the same way every time, and really evaluate every situation that comes before us, and start wondering, what do you want? Start asking that question. How can I help? Because I think justice is going to be different for everyone. And you're right, man. Like you said, it's just an off week. Sometimes I get discouraged greatly. About the profession, the job, society, the state of just the world. Like, you just, you see so many people struggling. You see so many people fighting. You see so much hate. I've never seen just pure hate in people's hearts. And just lost souls. So, I get it. I think it's so easy to get discouraged on what we're doing, and then in the profession. And I think that's a part of the problem too. And I'm sitting here saying that, I fall victim to it. Like, there are days where I just feel absolutely defeated. Like, no matter what I do or what decision I make, it's probably not going to make a difference. It's not going to make an impact. And I'm just going to be here. But then I have to remind myself, well, what good am I doing? Mm-hmm. That's not what's expected of me. And I think that could apply to multiple things in life in general, right? If we just roll over and give up, then what kind of outcome can you expect? But I do have hope, and you want to know what gives me that hope, and reassures me that things can change, that things can get better, is the people that I interact with and meet, and then the people I work with, the officers that I've worked with or have worked with in the past. Even if I don't, even if I don't currently have still a relationship with them, like, if everybody throughout my career has made an impact on me and taught me something, and that gives me hope. The conversations like we had last week, that gives me hope. But it doesn't mean it's easy.
No.
And
well, I don't I'm not trying to sound like a preacher tonight, but I guess I do, because I had a thought.
Preach it, man. Man, if anything, maybe we'll walk out of here and you'll have helped me.
I'm not a preacher. My dad is. I don't want to lose my thought, but getting into the law enforcement field at such a young age jaded me to the point to where I can't be a preacher. I've seen too much. I've done too much. I've said too much. Dude, I can't be a preacher. But that don't mean I can't still carry the faith. And all that to say, you were talking about the hate in the world and the division. And it made me think, like, you know, I'm going to quote some Bible here, okay, now. So it says, you know, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and the powers of the air. To break that down is, there are things the enemy roams about, like, and wants to destroy everything. Like, the enemy does not want there to be unity, doesn't want there to be heart, doesn't want there to be happiness. I mean, what's going on right now in our world is exactly what the enemy wants. And everybody's just, they're not sitting down and having this kind of conversation saying, what is going on? What can I do as an individual where I sit in my own household do to change? And that's what the Bible talks about. It's the enemy. It's not, we don't wrestle not against flesh and blood. It's not us on the surface level that doesn't like each other. Human beings, it's more powerful than that.
I think so.
And we just don't highlight that enough and talk about that and say, hey, like, and I know this isn't cop talk, but I feel like we need to revert back to some old school ways, you know, of Jesus in the Bible, and just try to bring that in our lives. Everybody listening, everybody in this world, just bring that to their table and say, okay, it's not my neighbor over here that I hate. You know, there's something stronger, more powerful that is causing this division. And just reflecting on ourselves and saying, what can we do, again, where we sit right here, to be a better person? That way, when I walk out my door, you know, tomorrow morning, and I encounter whoever I encounter, how can I make their day better? There's just so much selfishness, man. And again, I'm not preaching, saying, you know, this is me too. Like, I'm talking to myself, because I fall victim to this all the time. You just get in that mundane freaking loop, that routine. And like I said, I heard that, I heard my pastor on Sunday, and I just was thinking, man, like, dang, it's one of them things you just hear and just hit you right here, and you're like, okay, like, you know, you're right. I mean, it's just one of those things I needed to hear, man, and just having that heart, I think would change so much. And that's with anything, but specifically, you know, the criminal justice system, you know, our profession, like, we're not out here to self-serve. We're not out here to look at me, man, you know, how good I look in this uniform, or, and I got the power to write you a ticket, or I got the power to take you to jail, or that's not the why, man. That's not the authentic why that we should have. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people have it.
Yeah. I do. I do think that a majority doesn't. But it's just so damn uncomfortable to talk about the real reason why you're here, because you don't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You want to. We want to do what everybody else is doing sometimes. So I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be vulnerable.
That's hard.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people and a lot of cops that would listen to what we're saying and totally dismiss it, for being honest. And I know sometimes you and I've had a totally different experience with law enforcement. And I try to check myself sometimes because, man, I had some really crappy things happen to me, you know, and I try to be very cautious when it comes to grouping everybody, because I don't want to do that. But I would agree. Let me take that back. I'm going to be lying. I want to agree that most people in our profession, or most people that are part of the criminal legal process, are there for the right reasons. I want to believe that, but if I'm being totally honest, I struggle with believing that. That's a real struggle that I have, just because of the things that I've experienced myself, and then when I got out for those 2 years, I really started paying attention to things, like big time. Really started paying attention to things that I didn't pay attention to before. And I just seen so much like wrong and injustice and hate coming from people within our profession and in our system. And I'm like, why I didn't see that before? It took me, and I've said this before, it literally took me 2018. So from 2007 to 2018, it took me that long for it to just click in my mind. This isn't right. I think all those years, somebody came and made a complaint on an officer, and I'm like, that's stupid. That's not accurate. You know, they would never do that. You know, you hear something's missing from an evidence room somewhere. Something got logged. It's in another box. Like, you know, this guy planted dope on this cop, or on this citizen when they pulled him over. No, that's crazy. And then I start paying attention to that stuff, and I see these things, and I'm like, this stuff is going on.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, just to be truthful, I'm not gonna lie about it. Like, I struggle, and you help me with that. You know, I think that's why we're good. You know, we talked about it today. I think where I lack, you pick up, or you lack, I pick up. But I want to believe that everybody is in this profession for the right reason. But I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to openly not lie about it anymore. I struggle with it. It's just the truth.
Oh, I mean, the truth is that some people aren't.
Yeah.
But I think that's the truth with any profession. I think that's also the truth with the entire justice system, right? And that's when we start talking about political influence and self-gain and, you know, all these different things. And I think that to see a change, we have to start influencing people's hearts, minds, and attitudes. Can't change people. You can only hope to influence. You're going to have to influence the heart, mind, and attitude. To do that, I think we're going to have to make people aware of what our decisions, how our decisions can help and how our decisions can hurt. And we have to be open and honest about it. And I think that's the goal here with Failing Justice, is to do that. Let's highlight the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I think that's the only way you're going to influence the heart, the mind, and the attitude, and see the change. Go back to remembering what our purpose is and why we're here. It's to serve. And hold value in morals, ethics, and integrity. I think the change can start with the simple movement, but I think it's going to take a lot of people to get on board. I'll be honest.
No, and you're right, man. I look over here at the slogan, the new slogan, and that's why I chose it, because I was like, in just these few words, it's so powerful what the mission of Failing Justice is. It's simple. Unmasking truth, healing justice, because it needs healed. I mean, it's broken, like shattered, and transforming the system. And my prayer and hope is every day moving forward is that we do that. Unmasking truth, healing justice, and transform the system, even if it's just one small thing at a time, one small step at a time, because it's not there's people in this country who will probably never hear about us.
Yeah.
But for the ones that do, and the voices that we can amplify, Tyrone, Day, Richard Miles, like, I never heard of those guys.
No.
I mean, Richard Miles was on CNN, like he did a lot of interviews. He was on a lot of things, but I never heard of him.
I also never thought to look.
Yeah, that's another thing. You never thought to look. And if we can just give people like that a platform to talk, because we have a large law enforcement following, and
silent following.
Silent. You're right.
And that's okay. That's all right.
But to allow them to raise their voices and give them a platform to speak and say, hey, this is what happened to me. And, it starts with us, because we're always the first. We're always the very first encounter with people. And so it truly does start with us. Lots on our shoulders. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a big task, right? But the way I see it is, if you're not here for the right reasons, and that's not your goal, just get out. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, if you can't feel that, if you don't believe that, and you're here just because you need a paycheck, or you get to drive fast, put handcuffs on people, or whatever, like, I encourage you to get out, because we are dealing with people's lives, people's freedoms, and it's serious. It's serious business. And I tell you, I've enjoyed tonight's show because it was just real authentic talk. We have zero notes.
Yeah, we were all over the place, but
I just, maybe we were, maybe we weren't, but whatever the case may be, I feel like it was just authentic.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's totally okay.
It's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I look forward to next time.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to where we go with Failing Justice. The future's bright, and I'm excited about that. And we have to get the message out there. So those that are watching now or listen later, always say this. Go to our platforms, share it, like it. We're on all of them. Twitter, X, excuse me. It's hard to get that right. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. We're out there. And by doing your part and sharing that, telling your friends, that's going to help get this message spread.
I'd also add, too, to that. I would encourage people to reach out and have a conversation. If you got something that you want us to talk about, or you want to come and talk to us about something, you disagree with something we say, or you think we're missing something, we're not looking at it from maybe your perspective, then I encourage you to reach out and let us know, and let's have a conversation about it. I promise we'll create this will be a safe environment to have healthy conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't want, I would say just about anybody's welcome in this room.
100%.
And it doesn't matter even if you're not law enforcement.
Come on in.
It doesn't matter. We want to have these conversations and then turn around and say, okay, well, what can we do better? You're right, man. That's a good point. Anybody's welcome on this show, and reach out. I mean, if Facebook, all these platforms, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming again tonight. I know you're unofficial, so
unofficial.
You're not required to be here.
No,
but I'm glad that
can't commit.
No, man. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I could do this by myself now. So commitment may be around the corner. So you can
probably talk me into it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining this show. Thank you for being a loyal audience and supporting us. Even the silent folks, even the haters. You're still giving me a stat, so I appreciate it. But no, thank you. And tune in next week for the Failing Justice podcast.
Be safe.
This is Failing Justice.